nice fish.
We're using really light line, 3-ounce sinkers. Now, obviously, you got to make sure you hold no matter what. But it's just a pleasure being able to fish this light fish that are this big, and that there's so many of them.
Come on.
As you can see, I'm clearly bailing these fish out of here. Hey! I found the one
Let the pigeons loose.
suicidal porgy that was down there.
We couldn't hold them
I'm
down.
glad we don't have money on this.
Hey, it's still not up. Wait a second.
Yeah, this is true.
There's still
Still not
time
up.
to lose.
Doesn't count until it's in the bucket, John.
That's a nice fish.
That's a good one.
That's a solid fish.
Listen to the drag on that.
You know what? When you told me to bring these outfits out, Rich, I said, you know what? No fish are going to be pulling drag on these.
Oh, no.
Look at this thing.
Oh,
Wow.
that's me. That's my bed.
Oh, look at this.
Look at this.
This is amateur day. Get that fish in the boat.
I got the fish.
Oh, I just dropped a good one.
So, John, you see John trying intentionally?
Look at the size of that porgy.
Cost me this
That
little
was,
guy.
listen, I'll say it on camera, it was my bed. It was my bed.
That was probably, I mean, look at the size of that chop, Andy.
I'm just, you know what, though? When I was a kid and I caught one of these,
Oh, there he
which
is.
was never,
Which was never.
I would have said this was the 4-pound porgy. You know how many times you hear that story?
Yeah.
About the 4-pound porgy?
Well, they're tough to judge in size because they're deceiving, because they are a narrow fish. But that is, you know, that fish.
That's a monster fish.
That's 3 pounds, John. Yeah. The bite's been very consistent. There's a lot of areas you can fish up in here. Like I mentioned a few before, you have Marshall Field, Cold Spring Harbor, Oyster Bay. You go a little further down the beach towards Northport. You got a lot of rocks along the beach there. In the spring, these fish are real shallow on the sand eels. You know, you'll see some giant porgies under the sand eels.
What are you looking for, Rich? You get in an area, you're in an area for the first time. Where are you thinking about fishing?
Like anything, Andy, you're going to look for structure. You know, the porgies may not be right on the structure like the sea bass and the blackfish will be, but you can rest assured they're going to be around it. They always want to be near some form of structure. High rocks, any boulders, there's one. Boulders, mussel beds.
Mussel beds, yeah.
All that kind of stuff, which is all what we have here, too, which makes it such a good spot.
Now, John, I know you spend a lot of time doing this. Any particular depth you like the best at this?
No, Andy, everything's different. Rich found these fish. He's been out here fishing every day, found these fish in 10 feet of water. You know, down to the west a little bit, we tend to be in a little deeper water, you know, 20 to 30 feet. But there's nothing.
You find a rock pile, you run your machine.
Run your machine, look for some broken bottom, and look for life on your machine.
You'll mark them. You're right, John.
Right, and if you don't know what life on the machine is like, what you got to do is, once you get into a bite of porgies, you got to look back at your machine and say, oh, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and you can see the clouds coming through
right,
now.
you can see them coming through. So then you remember what that is for the next time.
You're right.
Everybody's machine is different, you know?
Yeah, and you always, like anything for the most part, except for when you're blackfishing and sea bassing, you want to anchor up a little bit uptide of the structure.
Right.
You really don't want to lay right on top of the rocks most of the time because you're going to get a lot of critters. You're going to get a lot of begals, you're going to get a lot of baby sea bass in the shallow water, a lot of bait stealers. What we're doing here, see, those begals won't leave the rocks to come to our bait.
Right.
All right? The sea bass will sometimes, but for the most part, oh my gosh, the only thing that's going to leave to come to that slick and build up in that slick are the porgies.
Right. And that's a mistake people make. They end up anchored very tight to the structure, and they end up battling a lot of really small fish. And even the small porgies sometimes a little more reluctant to come out of that structure.
And the other thing is that if you stay off the piece of structure a little bit, your chum goes through the whole structure and you're actually bringing the fish to you. Whereas if you anchor up in the middle of it, you're just
Right,
you're losing half of it right there.